today's training topic, we're going to talk about the document manager and just some of the neat little features that work with that, and just kind of how it works, and just some of the tools that you can use to navigate the system using that particular feature. Sorry about that. So obviously the very first thing with the document manager that you want to do is turning it on. And that's probably the trickiest part of using the document manager, is setting up the structure. Because essentially if we go to setup and we go to system setup, if you take a look here towards the top of the options, the very option right here is Document Manager. So you click on that and it has a couple of straightforward things. The very first option that you'll see is the option here for enabling Document Manager. So that's the first thing that you want to do. When you enable Document Manager, you can turn it on for orders, estimates, companies, or all three. Set that back. Okay, so we have it turned on, and then when you turn the option on, you have the option here for create the open folders, create the pending estimates, and create active clients. So, if you've been using the system for a while and you turn this option on after you've been using it for a while, you have the option to go ahead and create folders for these open transactions, these open companies for you. Obviously, if you have a large chunk of active companies, you have a lot of open orders, this might be something that you want to do at the end of the day, because it's going to have to go through and create the structure for all of those open items. So if you have a lot of open ones that you want to go ahead and pre-create the folders for, you can turn that on and just run that option and just kind of do that towards the end of the day. And like I mentioned, probably the trickiest part of the entire document management section is this option right here, which is basically where you tell it where the root folder is going to be. This is something that tech can help you set up, but essentially what this option entails is you're just telling it where to create the folders for the actual documents in the background. Because what happens with Document Manager is it's not actually storing those documents in a database. It's not storing it inside the actual SQL structure. It's creating a structure where you tell it to, in this case here, on our server in the serious folder in the document folder. So that's kind of telling it where to create all these folders and all these items. And I got ahead and pulled up, if you go to the root directory, so if I pull up where this is at, so program files on the server, serious, there's a folder for documents. And that's where it's going to go through company, default folders, estimates. That's where it goes through and creates that structure. So honestly, the entire document manager, this is probably the hardest step, and that's just figuring out where do you want to put your documents. So, and then you have something I have to get a little bit more information on myself, but alternate paths. So if you have alternate different locations or alternate different, hey, this accesses it through the / CRM, this one accesses it through just the program files. If you have alternate different paths to get to that same location, that's what this is set up here. I haven't really used it. Most people are perfectly fine with just setting up a single root path, but you can set up alternate sharing paths if you have a bit of an interesting network structure. The last thing that you can do on this tab that entails the actual setting up of the document manager is what you see down here, where you have this order, estimate, and company tab. What we're doing here is these are your default folders. And what that means is anytime that you make a new order, anytime you make a new estimate, anytime you make a new company, it's going to create a set of folders or a set of items that are in there as the default. So like if you wanted to make a default folder for images, a default folder for pictures, layouts, if you wanted to have a default structure of folders to put stuff into, or even just have a real, have a sample, here's a default file, you can set those up as your kind of default structures here, and it'll just, anytime you do a new order, will create that particular structure. So every time I do a new order, it automatically creates a folder in that order for new folder. So you can use that to set up your initial starting structure if you have an idea of, in terms of having different folders for different types of files, or having like a sample, here's a file that I want you to grab and edit this for every order. You can set that type of structure up within this screen here, and every transaction will follow that structure. In terms of the actual document manager though, that's all you need to really activate it and turn it on. Once you turn that function on, you may have to close and reopen the system for it to kind of recognize that that structure has been made, but once you've done that once, you're pretty much good to go. So let's take a look at some of the functions within the actual document folder. So what happens now is for any new company, any new order, any new estimate, once you are done saving, if we pull up a transaction, there's a tab there for documents. If you don't see the tab, you might have to click on Advanced and make sure that you have that tab showing. So if you don't see the tab, you might want to check and make sure that the tab is showing. But once you do that, you'll see a document tab. And so this is what the document tab looks like. You can see here, since I'm on an order, it went ahead and made my default folder a new folder. And we're just going to go through a couple of the functions that you can do on this screen. So obviously, the main benefit of the document manager is it's really just a shell to the outside, to your outside directory. And in fact, you can actually see that if you take a look here, it shows you what the current path is: CRM, Serious, Documents, Order, 1000. So it shows you that path, and you can actually go to the physical path by clicking on the folder icon here. This will actually open up that path where you specified it and let you work it as a regular Windows Explorer. But the main thing about this path is it's essentially just a location where you can stick documents of just about any type into it. So if I go here, I can pull up an image file, and I can click and drag that image over here and copy it into that folder, and it puts that file. Similarly, I could go ahead and say copy, go over here, right click, I could paste it. I can hit paste from clipboard. If I have it, sometimes if you copy and paste, it may not necessarily recognize it right away, so you can paste from the clipboard and it will handle it that way. And you can just click and I could go here and move this into that new folder and put it into there. So it works just like your regular Windows Explorer, where you can copy files into here, you can move them around. I can take this file and actually rename it. I can delete the file itself. So it works just like any other Windows Explorer, and just about any type of file that you can stick in here is going to fit. So I can drag a JPEG. I can go here and put, I think I had a PDF here somewhere, so I can go pull that PDF and drag that onto here. So just about any file that you have that you want to stick on here, whether it be PDFs, images, you can pull into that document tab, and they stay on that particular order. So if I clone this order, those files don't move with that order. So it's not going to keep copying files, so you don't have to worry about your database structure expanding exponentially when you copy or clone a job that had a bunch of documents. However, with that though, if you do clone a job or you convert a job, you have a link over here for additional folders. And this just helps you link back to previous jobs, previous orders. So if I click here, it shows me company. So I can actually open up the company's document tab and put stuff for the company record on this same order without actually having to go to that company record. Also, like I mentioned, if I go ahead and clone this job, and we'll save it. If I go to that document tab, it's going to have the direct link from the order that I cloned from. So cloned from order 1061, so I can actually open up the original order that I cloned from, and then if I wanted to, I could go and drag these files. I could drag them to the new one, I could copy and paste them, I can do what I want to if I want to bring those files from the old job over to the new job. So you can do that as well. Let's see here. You can make new folders, so like if you want to go ahead and you have a new folder, but for this one particular job you want to do something special in the structure, you can click up here, do a new folder, and create your image folder directly within this one order and pull that in there. And you're only creating that folder for that particular order. So this one doesn't do it as a default. It's just on this one particular order, I'm going to create that new file. So if we jump back just to kind of show you, if we go back into the section documents here, so here's kind of what it does for the structure. If for companies, it actually makes company, separates them out alphabetically to where that company falls into. Same thing under orders, it kind of separates them out in different numerical orders. So orders 1000 through 2000, those would be in here. So if I open that up, that has all the different folders for those different orders. So if I pulled up that order 1062, there are the files that we put in there for that particular order. So, so that's kind of, that's pretty much the main usage of that document tab. And obviously you can go here, and a lot of the Windows Explorer stuff you have access to here. If you want to change the view, you can change it and say icons. You can view your tiles. You can view it as a detailed view. Thumbnails if you have thumbnails. So just like your regular Windows Explorer stuff, you have a lot of the same options that you can do within here. Same thing, so again with the additional folders here, this is cloned orders that would include converted estimates. So if I converted an estimate to an order, it would have converted from estimate number X. So you would have that entire structure. So you can really zip around the system pretty well with those additional folders to find your files. One thing that does come up every now and then that we get that comes up every so often is a customer they have their own file structure already in place, and they don't really want to get rid of their structure. So they kind of want to use their structure in tandem with our structure. I've had that come up every now and then. What you can actually do is, I'm going to jump to the company record this time just because. So view company, and the company has its own document tab there. I guess one quick side note while we're here. If your company is a subsidiary, so right now I'm on Sunshine Shines. If I go to the company record, it's a subsidiary of ABC Signs. So if a company is a subsidiary, you can actually get the parent company's document as well. Just a real quick note there on how that kind of follows through. Anyways, so back to the topic at hand. So some people already have a structure in place. What you can do actually is if you go into, wherever you have your structure, you can actually go in and say, if you right-click and drag, you can actually create shortcut links within the structure. So I'm linking from Sunshine Shines into my actual picture folder. So if I open that up, that takes me to the original location of my pictures. And then you can see all those. So you can make shortcut links within your document tab if you have shortcuts to other folders, or you have your own folder structure that you just want to link to, anything like that. You can do stuff like that. So you can make links all over the system to different areas based off of how you want people to access the files in your system. And then just like any other thing, if I go back into those, go back to the document on the order, then I could right-click and print, open. Just, again, just like with anything else that you do with a Windows Explorer, you can access that through the menu. Because essentially, the document tab, the best way I like to look at it is it's more of a window. So the documents aren't hosted by the system. The documents aren't really controlled by the system. They aren't stored in the database. It's just a window to a folder structure that kind of lets you easily see and link these files up to an order so you can access them and view those files. And as far as the document manager goes, honestly, that's really the main aspects of it, is in terms of turning it on and just kind of using it and looking at how the different folders work, the different default files, and how you can just navigate through the folders within that particular screen. So I'll try to think of some other things while I'll go through a couple other questions, but let's go ahead, and we got a few questions here that I'm going to go ahead and start off with. Okay, so the first question is there a setting to not automatically create a job folder? Not really. Kind of once you turn on the document manager, it's going to create a folder for each job. However, if you don't put anything in that folder, it's not going to take up any actual database space because you just have an empty folder. It's not taking up any space. So it's really not going to affect the system at all if it just creates a folder and you don't put anything in that folder after it's been created. So there's really no harm in it creating that particular folder structure if nothing is put into that folder afterwards. So there's not really a way to kind of say an on-demand folder creation, so to speak, in the sense that if I don't do this option for creating open folders, you can kind of create on-demand for previous jobs. So if I go and pull up a really old job in the system, and we may have already done this option, so this probably isn't going to work. Yeah. So if you don't do the option to create the structure beforehand, if I go to the document tab on an order that hasn't created the folder yet, there'll be an option on here asking you to create that folder. So that only happens for those jobs that are kind of created before you turned on Document Manager, but before you did the option to create the existing folder structure. But it's all it really does is it just creates a folder for that particular transaction. But as far as on-demand stuff goes, it kind of just does it automatically, but it's not going to hurt their system by creating a folder that you don't put anything in. Okay, this next question is the best way to attach an email message to an order. That can be done through a number of different ways. Like if you use Outlook, well, I use typically, yes, I'm bad, I'm old, I like to use Outlook still. So what I like to do is I typically will just copy the email directly from Outlook and then just paste the email file into the document tab of a particular order. That's how I like to do it, because that will actually put the Outlook email file into that order. And that's kind of how I like to do it. Alternatively, you could do a text document and put that file, copy the email into a text document and then put that into the folder. There's a couple of different ways that you can do emails into into the document tab. But yeah, so as far as emails go, that's kind of, part of it depends on the structure and the email program that you use. So like I said, Outlook, since you can copy the email file directly, you can just copy Outlook's email straight to here. While other systems like Gmail and stuff, since you can't really get a copy of that file, you would have to go through and just kind of get the email over either through a text document. And typically what I'll do is I'll copy attachments in there separately. So if an email has an attachment, I'll copy the attachment and then I'll copy over the email. So it all just kind of depends on what email structure you have that determines how you can copy the emails over. I know that's a little bit open-ended, but it really depends on your email program. Okay, next question is, if you attach an Excel sheet, when it opens, does it let you edit and save, or do you need to open? Basically, if you attach an Excel document, you just open it like you would normally. So I don't know if I have any Excel documents, but if I have a Word document or something, let me see what I got. I can't use any of those. Okay, well, I'm just using a text file because it's really the same rules. Is once you put something into that location, you're just opening that file. So if I open this file up, I can literally go into here and say, make your changes, and then just save it, and you're all good to go. Because it's gonna, if you try to open the file in here and it's an Excel type file, it'll just open up straight to Excel. You make your adjustments and you can save it right away. So there's not really anything special you have to do to edit those files that are in that document tab. Someone was asking if I can go through the linking to an existing structure again. Okay, so that's really, all we had to do is find the existing structure. So I just picked a random location. So I just went to the picture tab. In your case, you can go to a network location or wherever you have your particular structure in place, you can find that location. And then once you get to that location, all you would have to do is kind of right-click and drag, and you can drag that onto, like I said, you can make that as a default record, you can make that on a company. Where you actually do that doesn't matter, but you just right-click and drag, and then you can do the option there for create a shortcut. And that just creates a shortcut to that location. So really the only tricky part there is just finding the location of the structure that you want to copy over. But after you do that, it's just a matter of making a shortcut into that particular folder. Okay, too many questions. Okay, since each order creates a new folder, what are the actual file names at the source? So basically, if we go to, and you can actually click on here to open up the source, but for the most part, the source is really going to be, documents, and then order estimate depends on what it is. So order is going to go order 1000, and then usually it's just O, order number, dash, company name, and then company number. That's typically the default structure that it creates that folder for. Okay, and then so that's orders. If I went back to the documents, I went to estimates, and then pulled up estimates, it does real similar. It's going to do E, estimate number, company name, company number. So the structure is pretty straightforward. It all just kind of depends, and then so that's the order estimate. Company is flat out just company name and then company number. So that's the default structure that it's going to go through whenever it sets that up. The next question is, yes, when you, so basically the next question is, can you set a default shortcut on a default folder? And the answer there is yes. So if I go and actually back to my system setup, and we take a look at my company record, I actually did that, where I created a default folder into my ABC signs. So if I go and say new company, and then I'm going to do new company real quick. Go to that Documents tab, it has that shortcut link there right off the bat. So essentially you can create shortcut links as your default folders to have those default shortcuts on the particular folder that you set the defaults up on. Are we able to control access to the Documents folder? Part of it depends on the place that you put your folders. So obviously for most people, they do want to keep it very open-ended, so you do make it in a location that has shared access to everyone. However, I think if we take a look here under security setup, of course it's going to take a while. Off the top of my head, I don't know if there are any security rights for the document manager. Let me try to get this pulled up. It's going to play against me today. And let's take a look through here and see if we can find anything about that. Like, I know that obviously, you know, there'd be options about the system setup that if you don't have access to system setup, you wouldn't be able to go in and edit the structure on the document manager. So, you know, you can lock out making sure that people don't have access to the actual setup of the document manager. That is pretty well controlled. Now, as far as transactions, as far as options on the actual restriction of the document management tab itself, like I said, I don't know if there are any ones that restrict access to the actual tab other than like your window settings, because since it's, like I said, since it's more of a window, if your folder structure for the documents is created in a location that can't be accessed on the network from a particular employee, you know, that way it's going to give them messages saying that they can't see that particular screen because they don't have the correct Windows permissions, but it's 100% Windows permissions and not really serious permissions that prevent that. So that's more on how you set up your root location that would control that is your Windows permissions that would determine if a person can access that location, because all we do is create a window to that location. So you can lock down access to the setup, but the actual tabs themselves is more controlled by your Windows setup more than it is the document tab. Next question is under the vendor accounts and part setup can use documents. Vendors, yes. Parts, no. Because vendors are just another type of company record. So if I pull up a vendor, I still have access to the Documents tab. And so here's the thing I wanted to show you earlier is if it didn't pre-create a folder, you can easily just go ahead and say, if you pull up that one, you can create the folders and create the folder for that particular vendor/order. But yeah, so documents will exist on the vendor side, but there are no documents on the part side. And I think that's probably for the best. Okay, so the next one is there any way for the document manager to move the files in an estimate folder to the invoice when it's converted? Not automatically. And we did kind of cover this a little bit, where if you go through, I'm just going to clean this up real quick, sorry, too many screens open. All right, so if I pull up a estimate, and I go to the documents there, and I'm just going to drag a couple of random things into here. So put letters, we'll put jellyfish. Okay, so if I put a couple of transactions or a couple of documents into the estimate, and I go through and I convert that to an order, so this is going to work against me today. But basically, once we convert it, it's not going to automatically copy those files over, but I will gain access to an additional folder link here to link back to the estimate that we converted from. And we've had this, it comes up every now and then, and there's strong arguments on both sides. I know it's something that I think internally we're still kind of researching the best way to handle it, but by default they did not want to do this because if you put a lot of high-size documents into that particular folder and you clone that a lot of times, you have the potential to really mess up your database size because you'd be cloning those files every time that you did a new document. There we go, so estimate 551, and there's all those documents. I don't think that can be done through a macro because I don't have access to that. Like I said, since it's more of a Windows thing more than a serious thing, we really don't touch those files. Those files aren't in the system database, they're just in the folder structure here. So that's not really something I can do through a macro since we really don't touch those files once they've actually been created. We just have a window to those files. But like you can, like I said, go here, open up that thing, and you can go and right-click and then copy the files over to the new estimate. So it's fairly easy to make those files onto the new invoice once it's been converted, but I don't think there's anything I can do to make that happen automatically, just because we don't really touch that side of it. We just have the window to those folders, but we don't actually touch those folders, and that's really the main issue. All right, any other questions? We have a lot of good questions today so far. I guess if I go back to the system setup, I didn't really mention this, but if I go edit that into that root directory, you can click on the Browse button and kind of find out where you want to put your default structure. So you can see, if you wanted to put it into a different, if you wanted to put your documents into a different location on the network, I can always, open up the network drive and link to a different location if I wanted to put that folder structure there. You do want to try to, like I said, you do want to try to make it fairly straightforward in terms of making sure that the location is a shared location, but but the structure where you stick it is really entirely up to you. Is there a place to store a part image? Not that I can think of off the top of my head. If I go in and say setup, let's see, if I pull up, this is getting a little bit off topic, but I'll take a quick look real quick. Yeah, the overall answer there is going to be no. I don't think there's anything I can really do to stick an image on there. I thought there might have been a screen here, but there, yeah, as far as images on the parts, there's really not much I can do on that front. Like you could create a UDF maybe. That's like along the lines of part image location and hard-coded image location, but you'd still have to go there manually. From the marketing side, is there an option for, I guess, option for documents? Can you explain that one a little bit more, please, in terms of like what you're looking for on that front? Marketing able to store images of products offered. Not in the sense like, in terms of products or parts, really like, yeah, the main options really there are orders, estimates, and companies. I really don't have any structure that I could do on the other side there. Now, there might be things that we could discuss off the call on a regular webinar in terms of, like, there are, if you go pricing setup, on the product side, you can tie an image to a product. That's mostly just for like the actual quick product screen. That doesn't actually change anything in the system, but you can load up an image there. There are things that we can maybe, like I said, maybe through UDFs and stuff that we can talk about handling that, but through the actual document manager feature within the system, orders, estimates, service tickets, companies are really your main functions there. Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any other questions, any other curiosities that people would like to know? It's, the nice thing, like I said, the worst thing that's going to happen with the document manager is if you make it where the structure isn't a shared location or is a location not everyone can access, you might have people that are trying to access the documents that don't have the Windows security settings to be able to view that location, and it's going to give them a message saying, their Windows settings aren't allowing them to view that. That's really the worst thing that can happen with the document manager, because once you have that, it's 100% just how you set up the structure. So, and that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the call. That's really the trickiest part of the entire thing, is that initial location. Okay, we got another question. If you attach a proof to an order and estimate and send it via email to the customer, do they get the attached document? Well, I mean, you could just copy the document out of the tab and paste it on an email, but that's all you're really doing is you're just pasting it into your particular email. So it still stays on the transaction as well as the customer getting a copy of whatever you send to them. So it doesn't really function any different than if you copy out a picture from your Documents tab or from your regular Documents folder in the system. It wouldn't behave any different if you tried to send out an email copying from the Document tab that we have as opposed to copying from Windows default Document tab. The behavior there wouldn't be any different. Okay, anything else? Any other curiosities, questions that y'all would like to know? If you wanted to make a request like that, you can send it to, I'm trying to think of who the best person to email that would be. I guess you can send it to consulting@sirius.com and we'll forward the request along. That's really the best I can offer up, though, on that. So you can send us a request and we'll definitely forward it on, but it's kind of up to the powers that be if it's something to go through with. Not a problem. Yeah, definitely send it to us and I'll make sure that the correct party gets it. And on that front, though, yeah, if you guys are using the document tabs and you do see stuff that you'd like, hey, we'd like to see this, or it'd be cool if we could do this. If you just want to make suggestions, obviously I can't guarantee every suggestion would be followed up on, or that every suggestion would be made. But if you do see things that you'd like to see happen to this tab, definitely let us know. Give us feedback. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Just let us know, because we're definitely going to constantly iterate upon how things work, and if we can make it make the screen better, we'll definitely pass things on as best we can. Okay, so we did have a request here. We currently have a file server set up. If I enable the document manager, is it as simple as copying over old file? Yeah, basically if you want to use our structure, you can just pull up a company and then copy the files over from your other structure. Or I don't know if you were here for the first part of the call. What you can actually do is if you already have an existing structure, what you can actually do is find the structure that you have, go to the company record on our system. So explore companies. And yeah, you could either copy the files over just by dragging them from your existing structure into the new structure, or if you wanted to keep your old structure in place, you could actually right-click, drag, and create a shortcut from your old structure into our structure. So that way our structure actually links to your existing structure, so that way you don't have to recreate everything. Or you could even do a combination of both. You could drag all the files over to our structure and create a shortcut, so that way nothing really gets missed. So if you already have a structure in place, there's a number of different things that you can do to kind of keep that old structure able to be searched while also starting to utilize our structure. Someone was asking what the request was that you were making earlier. The request that we got was essentially asking if there is a way to basically not create the folders automatically. Basically make it where we, when I pulled that vendor earlier up, where it had that create folder, essentially have that be the default behavior where the system will give you the document tab and give you the option to create the folder, but would not dynamically create the folder unless you told it to. That was the request. And so just as more of a personal note here, the document manager is definitely one of my personal favorite features that we've added, since, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware, we do a lot of custom report work, and it just makes, we use that for storing all of our crystal report files for a company. So we can go through and create those files, and if someone says, hey, can you update this person's file or make changes to this to this report, I can easily just jump into the folder structure and grab that report directly from the company record without trying to hunt down who worked on it last, without having to try to hunt through a different structure. I can just go directly to that company record and pull out their customer files, report files, and make adjustments to that. So on a personal level, it's definitely one of my favorite features. I really like the document manager because it does make storing things on a company level a lot easier in terms of we get mock-ups and stuff all the time for custom reports. We'll store that on the individual ticket that we're working on. That's how just on an internal level, that's how we use the document manager somewhat. Obviously that's how I use it. There's other people here that will use it differently, but that's kind of how that works. under the company, is there a order and estimate subfolder? That, unfortunately, no. That goes the other way. You can go from the order and estimate to the company, but I can't go from the company to the order and the estimate. I can't quite go that level. Now, you could do that kind of manually by if you went to, if you went to the structure where that is all stored, you can go into the order and go into the, you can go here and search for, all these are for walk-in, all these are for test company, these are for Candyland. So you can kind of go into the structure and see that. But that is one thing, because if you have, if you get to the point of having, hundreds, if not thousands of orders and estimates, trying to have all those show up on the company record would be a little bit daunting, which is why we can go from the order up to the company, because that's only a one-to-one, whereas the company to the order, you could be 1 to 1,000. So that's kind of why it goes one way but not the other. All right. Anything else? So yeah, like I said, I like the document manager. It's a really straightforward feature. Kind of once you have it set up, you don't have to do a whole lot to really maintain it and use it and work with it. So it's just really, it gives you a nice little section where you can put stuff on and just kind of utilize it utilize it that way. So. Okay. What is actually stored under the company? Whatever you want. So the company folder is just its own set of documents. So you could have, you have those folders for the orders and estimates where you can store, maybe images for a particular job or layouts for a particular job. Whereas on the company record, maybe you have, maybe you have a store distribution list, or maybe you have a contract that the customer signed that you want to keep access to. It's just another another field to put files on that are maybe not for a specific job, but are more for the company. So, you can put stuff like that. And that's typically, like I said, contracts is a really popular one. I've seen distribution lists. I've seen kind of like product details for that particular customer. Just anything that you want tied to the customer that isn't for a particular job, you can put on the company level rather than on an individual job. But in the sense, it's really just another folder. So it works just like the order and estimate folders. It's just another, another folder that's on the company level rather than a specific transaction. So, okay. Kristen, this one might be for you. Someone's asking about how soon will the recording be available?
Oh, thanks. The recording for this will be available before the end of the week. It's likely it'll be posted this afternoon, but it'll be definitely before the end of the week. And as a reminder, our offices are closed on Friday, so the latest would be tomorrow afternoon. We're going to push to get this one up in the next couple of days.
Cool, thank you. All right. Anything else? And I know I didn't really mention this, but I will go ahead, I guess, throw this on here real quick. There is under, if you go to the control.seriouswiki.com, and if we go to the search bar, and I'm going to search for Documents Manager, there is a document management wiki link that goes through just about everything that I covered is covered on this article. It's a really, really in-depth article. It talks about this, talks about all the different pictures, talks about the explorers, talks about the related folders function that I kind of touched on, talks about the folder structure, just about everything. So if you guys wanted to have a textual representation along with the video, there's a wiki article that kind of covers all this really, really well as well. So I also recommend that you guys, if you have any other, if you want to kind of read up on it, this article here gives you a lot of information that we cover on this call as well, more in a text form. So yeah, still scrolling. So there's a lot of information here. So I think it looks like the questions are winding down. That's about all I have for the document manager. So I think we are set.
Excellent. Kyle, I don't have anything else, and I already mentioned about the recording. That'll be posted before the end of the week.
Hmm.
And definitely encourage you to visit both the videos for training and the wiki that Kyle showed. And a quick note for next month, our topic will be on derived products, and that topic webinar will be on Wednesday, May 18th.
And one second, just basically for everyone's reference, I'm going to go ahead and post the link of the document manager wiki if anyone wants to copy that out of there.
And that's in the chat box if anyone's
Yep.
looking. Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Kyle, thank you for taking us through document management.
My pleasure.